You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Well, you managed to get going, and you managed to even get a name to him this week. I think that's wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to another edition of Global Trade This Week, brought to you by the fine people at Cap Logistics. I'm Pete Mento, Trade Geek Podcast, Mento LLC, and with me, as always, is the ice to my Irish whiskey. I had another one this week. Oh, yes. The queso to my nacho chips, which I have not had in going on almost 4 months. My good friend, Doug Draper, UPTIME Logistics. And with him, his trusty pal, Troy. Good to see you, Doug.
Sure. Pete, good to see you, my friend. It's always good to be back on a Monday. Now that we have some snow behind us, we're all back on sync. So it's good to see you.
Has it all melted yet?
Since it snowed 4 inches last night, no, it's fresh. I'm looking out the window right now and there's snow on the ground, but hey, it's all good. It'll be gone tomorrow. Oh,
man. Well, I'm excited for this week because you and I have some pretty good topics. I got a lot of I'm not going to say hate mail. There were a lot of people who were not very pleased with my commentary about the post office and the postal service. Mm-hmm. To them, I say, I think eat my shorts in the Bart Simpson-esque. I don't care how you feel about it. One of the great things about this show is I get to speak my mind, and just as you do. There were two very differing topics last week, and I think it's important that we are always as fair as we can be about how we feel about these topics. And it's a hard topic to discuss, but it's an important one. And if there can't be some place where the two of us can come on and be able to talk about contentious topics and be kind and what's the word I'm looking for? Open-minded to one another, then where can we be? So with that being said, friend.
It's so calm and collected. I don't even know what to say to that, but I agree 100%.
Well, we're going to have some more contention today, and I can't wait for it. But I'm excited for your first topic. I've seen them. I have seen what today's topics are already. There's going to be some fur flying. And with that, Doug, I'm looking forward to your first topics. Go ahead.
Yes. So the fur, I don't know if the fur will fly on this one, but maybe the second one. And this is a comment and a theme that we've had a couple times on this show. But over the weekend, it kind of came as, I don't know if an epiphany is the right word to use, but it just kind of smacked me in the face when I was talking to a friend. And I'm going to refer to this as kind of like the Roaring Twenties on Nitro speed, my friend. And what I mean by that is I think we, as an entire world, I speak because I'm an American in the U.S., so I have perspective there more so than other places, but I think the entire world is going to experience the proverbial roaring 20s as it comes up. So what I mean by that, right? So I'm big on reading quotes here, Pete, as you know from last week. So I'm going to read this verbatim when I was trying to come up with this topic and was doing some stuff on Wikipedia. So the Roaring Twenties was a decade of economic growth and widespread prosperity driven by recovery from wartime. The wartime devastation and deferred spending in a boom in construction and the rapid growth of consumer goods, including automobiles. So take away wartime and insert COVID. And talk about deferred spending, we've had a lot of it. And talk about injection of money into consumers' hands, we've had it twice. And then you have the boom in construction. There is so much pent-up demand on people wanting to get out and spend their money. It is going to be astronomical. I think that's going to start to show at the end of this year, say Q3, Q4. But there's going to be an explosion like you've never thought of on an economic scale in 2022 and beyond. If you just think of all the factors as an individual, you haven't been outside, you haven't been to restaurants, you haven't traveled, you haven't spent So money that you normally would have already spent is still in your pocket. Plus, you're getting hit with stimulus checks from the government. And you're going to buy goods, you're going to buy services, you're going to buy stuff, you're going to take experiences, whether you're going to travel, things of that nature. And all of those things impact the supply chain, right? You're going to buy more stuff. So that means more things coming overseas. There's going to be more things produced. There's going to be more e-commerce, more and more and more. So again, that goes, how does this relate to supply chain? It relates in the fact that if anybody's out there saying that, hey, we're almost through of the supply chain crunch, they're liars and they're foolish, because we are going to see this for the next 18 to 2 years, if not longer, in my opinion, based on the Roaring Twenties Nitro version 2020. So Pete, there you go. It's kind of a similar topic, but I think that we're kind of seeing the end. We're seeing the end of the tunnel, and people are about ready to explode with consumer behavior, travels, and the supply chain is going to be bent tremendously. It's not going away.
You're wrong.
I don't know if I like that one. What do you got?
You're wrong, Doug. I'm just gonna say you're wrong. You're wrong.
All right, bring it on.
And here's why you're wrong, buddy. We're gonna start with historically. All right. So the first thing I'm gonna say, after the 20s, what happened?
Oh, we had a crash. I didn't get, that's the next week's topic, right? There is what goes up must come down, right? So
so like before the pandemic, we had like this global economic overheating, and I think we're going to be in a period of economic, slow building of economic recovery. And I think what I would rather say is that there's going to be a recovery, and there's going to be economic growth. Where you're right is that the supply chain is going to continue to have unprecedented struggles, and it's not going to necessarily be from the need of it to have just never-ending growth. I think that the amount of consumption is going to remain the same. Peter Tershwell, I tweeted about this earlier today. You like that? You like how I used that term? I wish Keenan was on right now so we could have one of those young people tell us about how we should get woke. Peter had this great article today where he said that, Americans' need to consume is insatiable, and Chinese factories are right now, they're manufacturing goods 24/7. And Asian ports operate about 181 hours a month. But U.S. ports only operate with discharge about 114 hours a month. And the gates only operate 81 hours. So, there's some real problems here, man, right? How do we manage to continue that? And then on top of all of this, you have a shipping industry that has for years suffered with their own competitiveness, where you've got everybody and their uncle adding more capacity in order to be the lowest possible seller to take capacity from other people, when they finally realized that through cooperation, they would be able to all make tremendous amounts of money and drive up the price. So I don't think that we're going to see an end to congestion because of consumption in the way you're talking about it. I think we're not going to see an end to congestion because the shipping companies are going to have a Tony Montana-like grip on the list. And as far as the economy goes, 70% or so of all of the restaurants in most of the largest American cities are closed and are not going to reopen. You still have just massive swaths of the American economy that are underperforming to the point where we don't know if they're ever going to come back. You have entire industries that are dead and aren't coming back. The industrial real estate market in U.S. cities for office space are not going to recover. I mean, I love it, right? We have a whole new outlook on life. We're all hopeful. we're all getting Liberty juice injected into our brains, and I for one can't wait for my vaccine. But embrace the suck, my man. We are not coming back to this anytime soon. There is no joy in Mudville, okay? Stop singing Whoville. It's not going to get better quick. It's going to take a long time. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I'm with you. I think that I think we're on the same page. I think that for a variety of factors, but I'm just the common man out there looking at what's around me. And I know so many friends that are scheduling trips, buying, skis and this and that, and all the things that they couldn't do for the last year. That's just going to exacerbate the situation. So we're kind of aligned with the simple fact, because this show is about transportation, logistics, and economy, that it validates the point that we've said multiple times. Things ain't getting any better anytime soon. So with that one, let's flip over to your first topic, my man.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of things not getting any better, well, I guess that's subjective. So,
yeah.
When President Trump was president, one of the things that was both highly entertaining and made me miserable was before there was ever any diplomacy actions regarding trade, I had to watch the Twitter machine very closely, because at any given moment out of the White House, there could come something that would be incredibly inflammatory, and it could drastically change the outcome of trade negotiations. It was incredible, because it could be as simple as him finding out that Justin Trudeau said something awful about him, and him just going absolutely haywire and taking the USMCA and throwing it out a 20-story window, or it could be that he was angry at China and whatever it was. But when it came down to the Chinese delegation and the U.S. trade delegation sitting down in a room together and actually doing the job of what diplomats do, it was pretty much business as usual. They sat down together. They had nice, long, drawn-out conversations. Things were relatively routine. It was like watching paint dry or a tennis match, as far as I'm concerned. I don't understand what's happening. I kind of know there's going to be a winner and a loser, and everything in between is sort of immaterial. Can we just get to the end? Because I got to bet on this, right? So recently, the Biden administration sent their, oh, this is so awesome. They sent their trade delegation to Anchorage to meet with the Chinese. And the Biden administration is under a ton of pressure to not look soft with regards to the Chinese and the Russians, okay? And that was another conversation that happened this week. But they really don't want to look soft to the Chinese. So they send their trade delegation to Anchorage, and it turned into like my family's conversations with each other at the family reunion over potato salad, right? Like, your potato salad has too much mayonnaise in it. Oh, really? Well, your husband's having an affair, right? And then like food starts flying everywhere, and people are like kicking in windows in their cars, and they're bringing up fights from 25 years ago. The American delegation basically sat down and said something untoward, and before you know it, the Chinese delegation is talking about how the police are killing African Americans in the street, and how there's, the vaccine isn't being equally distributed to people of color in America. And then we're coming back at them about the Uyghur problem. And I mean, it was like the WWF in a conference room. It was ugly. And it kept going back and forth and back and forth. And the folks that are in the middle are saying, ladies and gentlemen, could we maybe remember that we're here to try to solve problems? They're like, no, we're not going to remember this. How about you stay out of it before I come over there and smack the taste out of your mouth? Because I'm not done with. And they just kept on going back and forth. And for those of us that watch international trade, it was like, I'm texting friends of mine saying, are you watching this? Because, it was one thing when you had President Trump, you were kind of expecting things to be a little bit wacky, on Twitter. But to have the trade delegations from both sides come at each other, like it was the weigh-in at a UFC event. It was just awesome. And you know what got accomplished? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing gets accomplished. At the end of it, nothing got accomplished. So to put it briefly, China and the US apparently still can't get anything accomplished, even though we have a new executive. And for those of you who thought that our problems were going to be solved once we really kind of tried to do a restart with China, you were wrong. And getting Trump out of office was going to fix that. You were wrong. So there needs to be a calming down between these two parties. And it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. The whole world needs the US and China to sit down, right? Maybe, order some Domino's, watch a comedy they're both really into. If it was me and one of my buddies and we were having a problem, there'd probably be like a 12-pack of Bud Light, probably like a Bruins game. And we'd have a long talk. We'd laugh a little bit. Things would get heated. We might get into a fist fight. But once everything was over with, we'd be cool again. Someone's got to get these two guys talking, remembering why they love each other, and bro it out and just get it over with. Because the way things are right now, we're looking at 4 more years of this crap. And honestly, I'm going too bald and getting too fat to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the WWE, WWF analogy. When you said that, I was thinking you got the Delaware Destroyer, going out there. But here's my take, right? So you got the Chinese going on in Anchorage, and then you got Biden popping off about Putin, right? So you got China and you have Russia, and you have two different people in the U.S. and in the politics throwing their jabs. So 2 comments come to one. Number one, the country will unite when there's a common enemy, right? So we don't know if it's Russian or China or both, but that's all posturing. And the next step, right? It's like a good novel or the intro to a movie, right? You just described it. Now we're all engaged. What the hell just happened? We've never seen that before. And I want to read the 2nd chapter of the book because that's when the excitement goes on. So not to over dramatize the situation, but I think it's posturing in a good way. And I can't wait to see what the next chapter looks like because we've never seen that. I think if people dive in and see what was said, how it was said, they'd be like, whoa, okay, that's a whole nother level we're at now. I'm just curious to see what happens in chapter 2.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, we're both interested parties in the fact that we're watching it shouldn't shock anybody. But the idea that all the news agencies made it front page news, that people who have nothing to do with trade and logistics were commenting on it and watching it, it became a real international story. It's incredible. All right, well, it's halftime for the Cap Logistics Global Trade This Week show. Thank you again to our good friends at Cap Logistics. As always, folks, help support this show by supporting our friends at Cap Logistics. To learn more about them and the services they provide, please check them out at www.caplogistics.com. They're kind enough to bring the show to you every week, and we do appreciate them for it. Please appreciate them by checking them out and seeing about the services and the solutions that they provide. So, Doug, with that, it is time for topic number 3 on this absolute banger of an episode.
Yes. I'm going to dive I'm going a different direction here real quick. So I have a friend out there named Sophia. Last week, she was like, what the hell is that thing over your shoulder, right? So we made mention of it one of the first shows, but I know our audience base has grown tremendously since. So this guy's name is Troy. It's a piece of artwork that I collected in college. The reason it's in my office because my wife hates it and said, well, it'll never be hung up on any walls in our house. That's sheet metal. It's sheet metal. And it's hair that comes over. So Troy, he's more into, I guess he's more into transportation than economics, but that's why he's part of the show. And I wanted to make sure that people knew who he was and why he was there. So anyway, there you go, Sophia, that one's for you. So you know what's going on. All right. My second topic is more transportation related, kind of for Troy. And it's related to the rise of the cargo-only airports. One thing that caught my attention over the weekend was this partnership between Rockford, Illinois Airport. I think it's a little bit northwest of the Chicago area. And then the Cologne Bonn airport in Germany. And they're really focusing in on getting those as kind of a direct cargo only type of transfers. There's a lot of peripheral reasons around that. There's a lot of the UPS, FedEx, DHL on both sides have a lot of bases around there and consolidation points. So it makes sense, but I think it really is going to define the level that when the pandemic is over, people start to travel, per my first point, airlines get more congested. The airlines are a little bit hesitant to drop a whole bunch of capacity into the market, and the consumer buying habits changing to e-commerce. I think you're going to see the growth of cargo-only airports, and there's going to be all these nuances that are going to play around. And I think that, or I don't think, one of the reasons that the Rockford and Cologne Bonn connection was so pragmatic as well is because of the amount of international trade, import and export into the Chicagoland area, to Germany as a gateway and from Germany as a gateway. So I think that you'll see a lot of those type of airports pop up around peripheral metro areas to take capacity out of the passenger airline industry, deal with the consumer buying habit changes with e-commerce, and not congest the existing infrastructure. So I thought that was interesting that I saw over the weekend, and I'm like, you know what? My prediction, we're going to see more of that as things continue to develop and evolve.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about this stuff before. When I saw your topic and I started doing a little research into it, it makes sense. It's just a logical progression, and why we don't have more of it makes sense. Why aren't there more of these conduits to deal with congestion? If you have passengers and cargo going to the same places, and I saw some studies that said it's just because of noise pollution, the size of the runways that have to be built. But there's a lot of spaces now that can be converted outside of large metropolitan areas where you could put these things. And because of the growing, I guess, intelligence that goes into distribution models, there's a lot of thought that could go into building big cargo airports outside of these areas. Like as an example, you were talking about Rockford, Illinois. Think of what you could do in Wisconsin or, in Texas, one of those big areas outside of Dallas or between Dallas and Houston, where you'd be able to put a large cargo airport and be able to distribute from there. I think that the time's come to maybe reconsider that and to take some of these larger airports that do have all the congestion with flights that are coming in and out for cargo, like Atlanta, like Chicago, like JFK, and can divert that aircraft to another part of the world where you'd be able to get better throughput for passengers. It just makes sense. And someone should engage in some study with that. There's a lot of logistics PhD work that could probably be done and funded by some of these folks to maybe make a little more sense of that than ever I could.
Yeah. So last comment on that, because I'm sure there's people out there saying you knuckleheads don't understand what we already got. I know there's Rickenbaugh outside of Columbus, right? That they've been doing that for decades. And then you have the Alliance Business Park outside of Dallas, right? Those are two gems I think they're going to really transform. So yes, global trade this week, audience. We know there's others out there. That was just the example that popped up on the radar from this weekend. So anyway.
Well, we didn't know. You knew. I didn't know.
Well, we got to look like we know what we're talking about.
Hey, man, I know they're building a spaceport out of Denver.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're working on it. So speaking of knowing what we're talking about, Pete, I'm lobbing the final play over to you. What's your fourth topic?
Yeah, so dabbling again into the ever-present waters of making people angry. There is, wow. So our Secretary of State is working with the Europeans to try to delay carbon border taxes. We've talked about carbon border taxes in the past, and the idea that the Europeans have is to create the first carbon border tax that would be put onto countries that are not living up to particular border standards regarding global warming standards and certain clean energy standards. So that, there's a standard, a global standard, that if you're not living up to it in accordance with certain inspections, global treaties, that the imports of your goods, because of transportation costs and the volume, so the actual physical the physical weight of the goods in some instances is going to have a tariff imposed on them. So steel is an example that they always give. There would be a percentage based on the weight. So it would be, say, if it weighs 300 tons, then there would be a 30% volume-based carbon tax that could go on it. These carbon taxes could be brutal on commodities like steel, even coal, believe it or not, if you're going to move it around the world. I don't know if that somebody would. But so here's what's happening lately, right? This is what makes it such a contentious topic. So Senator Kerry, or Secretary Kerry, goes over to Europe recently and says to the Europeans, hey, listen, carbon taxes, great idea. Am I right? Huh? Love it. You and me, seeing eye to eye. Great idea. Okay? Here's the thing. Don't do them yet. Because if you do them, we're going to have to pay them. And we're not ready for that. Okay? We don't think it's a great idea because we're not up to snuff on that. And it's just really bad idea. So how about this instead? You delay it a couple more years so that we can impose them at the exact same time you do. And that way, you and us in Canada and Japan and a couple of the other G8, we just stick it to China as hard as we can, all at the same time, because they're not going to be ready for a very, very long time. And then, everyone's like, oh, well, I thought that China wasn't going to have to pay them because, we had a head start. Nope. China is considered a first world economy. They've got these big, beautiful, gleaming cities like everyone else. And if you read the way that these are being built, if you are taking part in the Western economies, if you have all these OECD standards, if you got all the same opportunities as everyone else, and you take part in all the same other standardizations, you could be doing your part. And remember that the basis for that standard is lowered for other countries. So if you could be living up to the lowered standard, you wouldn't have to worry about these carbon offsets, but you're not. You're still running around doing whatever you're doing because, well, you get away with it. So is this going to be a way to change that and get people to maybe try a little harder to do something about our planet? Well, there's a problem with all of this, my friend. And that problem is the world's other gigantically populous nation, and that's India. So India would also find itself probably deeply, deeply paying these carbon import taxes into America. And that's not something that we want to do to one of America's most important trading partners. And we would also probably find another one of our important trading partners askew in that, and it would be Mexico. So what are we going to do to get these two countries up to snuff? I don't know. But I've got a feeling we'll probably sell them both, into Carbon Hawk in order to absolutely suplex China from the top rope, if that's what it means that we would need to do to put them in the hurt locker. We've got to find ways to, in whatever way possible, set them back so that we can stop them from continuing their march into global economic dominance. So that's where we're at, doing everything we can to convince the Europeans to slow down, because there is a standard we want to put on our enemies that we are not quite ready to put on ourselves. Imagine that, a little economic hypocrisy for your friends in Washington, D.C.
Yes, the American way. I first of all, the way that you dumbed that down for people like myself is phenomenal, right? The story that you just laid it out is perfect. And I agree that it'll be interesting to see if Secretary Kerry can keep the EU in check to some degree, because they are so far, they meaning the EU, is so far ahead of us in carbon emissions management that, we're coming late to the party, and we'll see how long they're willing to wait. But they got a lot of stuff dialed in, and we don't want to go into that here in the show, but I know that there's an emissions trading system that they have set up where you get X number of carbon, and I have some, and we can trade and sell and all this very creative ways to manage it. The thing is, it needs to be in concert because everybody shares the air, right? It's not like we're in a column of our own atmosphere. It's all shared together. So this is probably the first true global impact type of legislation that's going to come to pass. And it'll be interesting to see how we go about doing it. But yeah, you got some phenomenal points, and we could have a 2-hour show on they could do this or they could do that, or we could do this or we could do that. But I think it's spot on is the bottom line.
Well, Doug, I have a long list of things Europeans don't do right. So we can start with steak and then go right into cheeseburgers. They're abysmal at that. Yeah, I've got a long list. Okay. So, but yeah, I will agree with you that as far as carbon offsets go, they've done an excellent job. And there's a lot of people right now that are going to say that's politics. Well, you can say whatever you want, but if we're going to have a global standard, we've got to start somewhere. And I think that trying to for once as a nation say that maybe our allies, and that's who they are, have come up with a place that we can at least start with. We've got to have some place to compromise around. And our NATO allies are our NATO allies, and we should at least start there and work our way backwards. This is something that we've got to work on as a community rather than just sit here and try to come up with our own answers. So I'm with you, Doug. It's probably the best way to go. And with that, I guess it's time for us to close it out.
Yep, you got it. You'll have to go and try out. Have you ever had a Royale with cheese? Do you know what they call
Royale
it? Pounder. And come on, there you go.
Look at me,
Royale
Doug.
with cheese.
Doug, I have had fast food in over 100 countries, my friend. I have. If you can eat it out of a paper wrapper in any country, I've probably done it. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. All right. Well, that's a perfect way to end this week. Of course, it's Global Trade this week, brought to you by Cap Logistics. Pete, you gave an overwhelmingly positive review of those guys at halftime. CapLogistics.com. They do some amazing things in their core business as well as producing the show. So want to give those guys a shout out as well. And I guess that wraps it for this week, Pete. I don't know. Troy will be over my shoulder. I don't think we'll call him out next week, but appreciate you being part of the show today, my friend.
Appreciate you, buddy. We'll see you next week.